Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon, an intersex and non-binary person who uses fair, I hope I have that right, and they-them pronouns, is a 2017 dark afrofuturist science fiction story about an intersex and autistic black woman named Aster, from the lowest class of a brutally stratified generation ship, thematically recreating the traumas of slavery and associated racist oppression. It is a nasty setting, not for the easily triggered, but, in my opinion, not as dark as the Broken Earth series. As much as it dwells in trauma, it also follows a plot about mysterious blackouts and the efforts to subvert the tyrant in control of the ship in a way I found reminiscent of Brandon Sanderson's writing. There's also a fair amount of biblical allusion and general Christian themes. Like with Neptune Frost, I'm probably too white to review it properly, but I can relate to it on the level of being intersex and autistic. And on those levels, I find I can relate to the character pretty well, and it provides a great representation, maybe not as much as it would be for intersex black autistic people, but it's still pretty good. As well as with the deuteragonist, Theo, who is trans, but an egg, which is to say that she's a woman who has yet to realize she is a woman. The story is set on the Matilda, a 26-deck generation ship that left Earth centuries ago following some great catastrophe, bound for a planet to colonize that may or may not actually exist. There is an overt Noah's Ark theme, as well as the part where the Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years. The Matilda, named in allusion to the illegal slave ship Clotilda, is large enough to feel like its own little world, yet with a limited breadth and engineering problems similar to the Ringworld, complete with its own Dyson sphere artificial sun. Similar to Snowpiercer, each deck has its own society, with an overarching class hierarchy in which the lowest decks carry the lowest class. Black people who are more or less slaves of the white upper class, in an allusion to the Jews of Egypt. The biblical allusions are kind of disjointed, but in a way that still works because it's poetic and doesn't have the same problems as the disjointed allusions to Nazi Germany in the second Carmilla season. In the lower decks, there is some kind of environmental chemical contamination, alluding to how real-world black neighborhoods can be contaminated with things like lead and air pollution. But in this case, it's chemicals similar to those that caused Alex Jones to declare, "I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay!" As a result, many of the people of the lower decks are intersex, creating a visual distinction between them and the people of the upper decks that is used to further dehumanize them. Aster and her community specifically appear to have congenital adrenal hyperplasia, a disorder in which testosterone is far higher than in most women, resulting in hirsutism, pronounced facial hair. The picture on the cover fails to represent this. It could also be polycystic ovary syndrome, in which cysts form on the ovaries, which also induces higher testosterone and hirsutism. I'm not a doctor, this is just my guess. Aster is a rogue doctor, a scientist who cultivates medicinal herbs and studies everything while doing what she can to help the people of her culture. I believe she is a Zipporah figure, the dark-skinned wife of the lighter-skinned Moses. Zipporah rarely gets talked about, except as an extension of Moses, or the cause of him ultimately meeting God, so centering a Zipporah figure in the narrative fits into the black anarcha-feminist theme. Naturally nonverbal, she speaks extremely deliberately, with technical exactness. In this way, she performs the archetypal autistic stilted verbose use of language, which is often abused in an abusive stereotype, like with Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory, but is authentically represented here. As someone who naturally talks like that, I found it refreshing. There is a part I like where she says that she likes words, but they don't come easy. I get that. It also might allude to the Midrash, saying that Moses had a stutter and thus chose his words very deliberately. Aster is a butch lesbian with an on-again, off-again relationship with Giselle, a femme lesbian who she grew up with. Giselle is a dick. Like, she suffered untold abuses She is justified in being prickly, but the fact remains that she's a huge dick. She has some not well-defined mental illness, certainly some PTSD, as well as, I don't know, borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder. Honestly, she's a bit abusive, and Aster is justifiably annoyed by her, but also feels affectionate for her, and has a lot more pressing issues to concern her. Solomon engages in a dialogue with Octavia Butler, recreating an element in Parable of the Sower that particularly bothered me, and does it with more nuance. In Parable of the Sower, a dickish companion of the protagonist engages in self-harm, apparently out of masochistic enjoyment of her pain, and it's portrayed as evil for hurting the supernaturally empathetic protagonist, who feels genuine pain when she sees other people in pain. Butler uses this framing to imply that all masochists are evil, revealed by this uniquely holy protagonist, who can see the truths of the world that capitalism has blinded everyone else to, which is one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of her writing. Butler later tried to amend her work in Fledgling by implying that masochists can be correct that their lifestyles have value, in the context of being too drugged up to think straight. Solomon does something similar by having Giselle be overtly masochistic and abusive and demanding Aster take a dominant role with her, when she's not always comfortable doing so. There's an early scene that runs very similar to the one in Parable of the Sower, where Giselle self-harms for masochistic enjoyment right in front of Aster, clearly wanting attention, but instead of condemning her and masochists in general, Aster asserts her boundaries while acknowledging that Giselle has the right to self-harm elsewhere. That is superb, and it makes me appreciate Solomon's writing a great deal. After a series of mysterious blackouts, Aster investigates something her mother was into before she died to solve the mystery. She learns that her mother decided humanity was better off returning to Earth and secretly made the ship go in reverse, slingshotting around the black hole to get back in less time.
But we're gonna have to go through the black hole, though.
Any objections?
As the people rise up in revolution, Aster sneaks off to a shuttle and escapes to Earth, finally setting foot on the soil, in an apparent allusion to Noah at the end of the flood. The Earth has healed itself from whatever calamity occurred in the distant past, and due to time dilation, Aster is the first human to set foot on it for a very long time. In this way, she takes the role of Adam. In the first description of God's creation of humanity, it says, "Male and female he made them," which precedes the story of the creation of Eve, and one midrash written to explain this discrepancy has God create Adam himself as both male and female. In this way, Aster's intersexuality is framed as holy, not abnormal. Returned to the symbolic Garden of Eden, Aster has a chance to spiritually heal. Maybe the rest of her people will follow her, maybe not. Either way, she's finally free. I feel weird saying that I found this book fun, but it is compelling. Though I don't personally connect to the allusions to Black oppression, I can relate to it on the level of generational trauma and emotional catharsis in evoking that trauma. Some of my ancestors were Holocaust survivors, and I relate to the idea of recreating generational trauma in a traumatic setting, like with Schindler's List. I think Nope meets the two halfway by having a story centered on Black trauma that feels like a story about living through fascism, with the same sort of chaotic apprehension, and I thought of Nope a lot when reading this. On that note, though the book does make a lot of allusions to the Hebrew Bible, it is also very Christian in theme. I read this book with the Intersex book club, and it was pointed out that there is this Christian saviorism narrative in the form of the one-and-done revolution and an accelerationist theme. Aster refuses to do something that would help the current oppressive regime, even though doing so would keep it from getting worse, and the plot has this wind-up causing a revolution that seemingly fixes everything. Aster would be one of those people who wouldn't vote for Harris and get Trump elected. It's frustratingly reductive, And it fits with a Christian theme, where a more Jewish take might be that the work to make the world better is unending, isn't all leading to a big solution, and the little changes to make the world better are more desirable than sticking to Kantian moral principles. In this way, the book reflects oppressive cultural Christianity. The book isn't perfect, but it is enjoyable. I relate to the character of Aster a great deal, and I love that she's this fun, intersex, neurodivergent hero. It gives me the warm and fuzzies the way I feel about Ted, the accidentally intersex character from El Goonish Shive. Providing representation for a niche minority of intersecting identities is risky because most people won't relate to that, but it feels incredible for the people who don't usually get representation to find it in a cool character like Aster.